Good morning. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our panel, Women in FinTech. And today we managed to assemble a really star panel ranging from tech companies to banking giants to co-founders of tech startups. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the next hour. Just to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Emma. I'm the CEO of Long Hash Ventures. We're a blockchain-focused accelerator and investor. So it's a very exciting time for us. So I want to pass the mic around for the rest of the panelists to quickly introduce themselves. So can I pass the mic to Stacy to get us started?
Thank you, Emma. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having us. It's been an extraordinary weekend, so it's a nice way to end the week today with all of my panelists. My name is Stacy Lacey. I work for Citi and leading operations and technology for Asia Pacific. I'm also the Chief Information Officer for Citi Asia here as well. Have been with Citi for 23 years, based out of Singapore, a mother of three wonderful but annoying children at times, 13, 10, and then my own CEO, Abigail, at 5.5. Back to you, Emma.
Thank you. Dr. Mary, would you like to quickly introduce yourself and your background?
Thank you, and thanks for having me. This is such a wonderful panel, a very exciting week and wonderful organization of this event. So my name is Mary Rosic. I'm originally from Barcelona in Spain, but I've been in Singapore for a very long time. I work for FinTech companies, banks, payments companies, technology, and I've lived in 6 countries, and I think we are in a really special place in Singapore at the right time, at the right moment for women in technology. So very excited. Something else about myself, I have 2 kids. I've been in startups as well as in nonprofits. And I think that it's wonderful that we have these panels to continue to bring more women up to the tech ladder. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mary. Fern, over to you.
So, morning, everyone. My name is Fern. I actually work for SC Ventures. So what I actually do is I'm actually a corporate venture builder. So a good part of my job actually requires me to be studying a lot of the technology trends, the demographic trends, which in turn actually guide and inform us as to what new business models should we be building in our untapped markets. So examples of the projects that I've been involved with would be a retirement planning platform, a gender lens investment platform. So what we actually do is we build them from scratch, from within, and then we spin them out as separate legal entities. Prior to Standard Chartered, I actually came from OCBC Bank. So I actually was very, very fortunate to be part of the founding team, where we built the Open Vault at OCBC, the FinTech and Innovation Lab from scratch. So a bit more on kids. I have 2 kids, annoying, definitely. 1 boy, 1 girl, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Thank you, Fern. Welcome. Dr. Antela?
Yes, hi. So thank you very much for having me on the panel. Yes, it has been a busy week. We were just pitching yesterday at the demo day. I'm very happy to be one of the top 3 companies, FinTech, globally. So apart from that, I'm actually a finance professor at UST, Hong Kong UST's business school in Hong Kong since 2008. And prior to that, I was in an investment bank and hedge funds. So I basically enjoy working in finance, but also bringing the technology to finance, because by training, I'm a financial engineer by heart, so a tech person by heart. Also have 3 kids, like Stacy, 13, 11, and 7. So annoying, not annoying, is actually a very good booster. It's kind of my fallback option, and it drives you for achieving higher targets. It's actually a very good combination of family and work in both. So I enjoy having both. High adrenaline, nonstop.
Well, congratulations on your win yesterday. And also, who says women cannot balance career and family, right? It looks like I have to catch up because I only have 1 kid. Over to you, Rosalind.
Hi, my name is Rosalind Koo. I was a banker in New York 32 years ago. In one of my generations of work I've done, this is my 3rd tech startup. And we're now actually helping banks get into health with a health is wealth proposition. So many banks now white label our app for their customers, for their corporate customers, their high net worth, and their retail customers, so that they can help their clients be physically healthy, financially wealthy, and mentally healthy. So that's our journey.
That's super exciting. I can't wait to dig into each of these amazing panelists' journey and, how did you get here? I'm sure there's a lot of struggle, but there's also a lot of, satisfactory along the way. So maybe we'll just kind of ease into this, right? So can we hear some of the personal stories? Like, how did you get to where you are today? What kind of struggles did you have to go through? We can just gonna quickly go through the panel. Who would like to go first? Stacy, let's start from you.
Yeah, it's wonderful always to share a panel with such, extraordinary women and leaders and, individuals. And it's panel like these that you want to continue to do well, isn't it? Because you demonstrate to be the role models and to show, the younger women and men that, leadership looks like this, doesn't have to look a certain way. Emma, I would say I have what you call a textbook, career. I joined the bank. I wasn't a technologist, unlike some of you who are technical engineers. I learned my craft with technology, but I was interested and I always learned how to ask the right questions. So, you fast forward 23 years, I would say I'm a business technologist. I'm at the table supporting my businesses in thinking through, their solutions, their propositions through technology, taking risks, calculated risks, and then also showing our colleagues how to sustainably develop technology and still be cool and work in a bank. Unlike 20 years ago, everybody wants to work for a bank. Now it's different. So how do we still stay cool, but still attract the best talent is, what keeps me thinking. I would also just say that, one of the story I had from a career perspective is the first decade I would call myself having an accidental career. So I did very well. Everybody gave me a bigger job, a different assignment in a different geography. And then, suddenly it's like, where am I trying to go? Or am I just going to continue to do what others want me to do? So I would turn to you that second decade was much more purposeful. Thinking about the assignments I wanted to have, getting into technologies that I'm interested in. Rosalind, I went into wealth. So the last assignment I just had was running private bank operations and technology. And I can tell you it's a whole different world. So I really resonated by you having that whole ecosystem and not just, one sector of, looking after wealth. So back to you, Emma. That's a little bit of me.
That's really exciting. And I think that's a good segue into Rosalind's story, right? Because it sounds like you two had a bit of similar journey, started off in a corporate banking world where it was really glamorous. Everybody wants to be in 15, 20 years ago. And that's kind of my personal journey as well. And then there come a point where you're like, what's the purpose of my career, right? What impact do I want to drive? And so Rosalind, would love to hear what prompted you into making that transition and make you go through all the difficult journeys that you have to go through to get where you are today.
So yeah, I'm known as the person who spent all my family savings, not just my savings, but my retired husband's savings and my college, my kids' college fund to start my startup. And I did it because I spent 5 years trying to convince my employer to invest in Asia, to take down the cost of healthcare. They never said yes. So I left to build a competitor. And I took all of my family's money and signed a personal guarantee for another $5 million to build my startup. But this is my second struggle. My first struggle 20 years ago was during the .com. I built a .com. It was my second startup. But I discovered one weekend that my daughter had epilepsy. And I was commuting to KL every week. But you know what? My husband didn't quit. I did. And so I stopped working and I got my daughter diagnosed, and I only went back into the workplace once I put my 2 kids into special needs. So yeah, women bear a bigger burden. So now that my kids are 25 and 23, I can build my startup, but I stopped for years to get my kids through their journey.
That's fascinating. I think through your sharing, that also brings into the question, right? Like we all have big ambitions. We live in the best times, but sometimes you do have to take a step back because you want to be perfect and you want to be there for your family as well, right? Those are some of the struggles that people have, women particularly, have to go through. That's very, very inspiring. And Dr. Mary, maybe we can hear from you because you're also a founder, CEO, right? So what was your journey?
So thanks for the question. I think it's really interesting when we get close to our 50s to look back at our careers. And somehow everything seems to make sense. It looks like it was completely planned, well scheduled, all the choices were the right ones. And the reality is that we just make the best choices that we have in front of us all the time. It's not like we plan, oh, I'm going to do an MBA and then I'm going to do, a PhD and then I'm going to go for a global organization. No, it's just something that one day you buy, I remember I was in New York, I bought The Economist, and it was the first week that The Economist was going in color. So it was a long time ago, right? That was probably 2001, and they had this ad for the MBA there, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to go and do this? And things happen that way. You get ideas, but you have to follow through because everybody has ideas. And sometimes what I always recommend is just don't take the next best option that you have in front of you when you look at planning your career or thinking through what's possible for you in your future. Think what's the craziest, biggest idea that you can think of that you really feel that you want to do, and then work backwards on what you need to put in place in order to get there, build those foundations, right? So I work in 6 countries, not because I made a commitment to go around the world, but I had a friend who was a designer in one of my first companies, and she said, oh, Mary, I want to go and work in New York. And I thought, this is the craziest thing. I never thought about that. But a friend of mine had his startup in New York. He needed somebody, and he sent me to New York when I was 26, and it was an amazing experience. I learned so much. It was the dot-com boom, and I loved it. And from there, I just got more and more opportunities. So my advice is always, whatever you do, think big, and do whatever you do it very well, because then opportunities come up. People will come and give you more opportunities because they've seen you deliver, they've seen you execute, and that takes you to the next level.
Thank you, Dr. Mary. I think the lesson from that is being open and go with the flow. And I think I've read somewhere, right, for men, if they were asked to do a new job they've never done before, most men would put up their hands, and women would be like, I haven't done this before, I haven't got relevant experience. And that's actually something we should bear in mind, right? Like, why don't we open ourselves up for challenges? And you never know where the roads will lead you. And I want to hear from Fern as well. Because you've been kind of leading the charge in terms of building a very innovative culture within a traditional banking setting, right? You're doing venture building and all these things. And I'm sure there are challenges doing that in a very traditional setting. So can you walk us through your journey and what prompted you into this?
Okay. So I think I agree with everyone, all these little nuggets that we have shared. So maybe if I could just take a step back and share from a corporate perspective. My background is actually in mathematics. So my degree is in mathematics. My first master's is in mathematics. I think the turning point was when I decided to do my first master's was in mathematics. My second master's was in innovation management. That switched my career. I've been in the innovation space for as long as I can remember, but that really brought me into FinTech and going back to your question on how do we build an innovative culture within the bank. with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but not without senior management support, you see. So I came from a local bank. I'm now in a global bank, and I can just share that, you know how we say it takes a village to raise a child? I think in a corporate setting, it also takes the entire community to agree to say, yes, we're going to rewire the DNA in banking together. You know, we are going to take bold collective actions together. So number one, you definitely need senior management support. And I've seen that, you know, in both the organizations. The other one is it's really about communicating. How do you spread awareness? How do you sell all these rock star stories? You know, and you know, we all work in a bank, it's regulated, people are always afraid, but how do you show them that we are able to experiment and take baby steps in a very safe, you know, fail-safe environment? And where people build that sense of confidence, you know, then you start to see that momentum going, correct? So first one is senior management support. Second one is really building awareness. And the last is really about celebrating successes, celebrating failures, you know, bringing everyone on that bandwagon together. You know, these are just, you know, 3 simple points that I can share at the off the top of my head.
Thank you for that. There's one question I want to come back to you, but let's hear Antella's story. How did you move from being adjunct professor at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology academics into being a founder and CEO of tech companies?
As I think, Mary was saying, if I look at it now and look backward, it looks like very well planned, but nothing of that was planned actually. Right now I'm in between finance and technology. It's something I really love, but I didn't really plan to land here. It's just, as a child, I love math and I wanted to be an engineer. I studied finance because my father's a finance professor. So he said, yeah, that's a job for girls. And okay, and I did finance. But somehow, because I really loved building stuff and really experimented the tech around, I ended up again in tech. So it's the passion which you'll never stop. I didn't have the objective to be here. It's just by exploring what I love to do on top of what other things that you need to do, like having a family. I gave up. I mean, I resigned from my job in investment bank in 2007 because my first child was born and I was supposed to travel around Asia. My husband was traveling, so that's not possible. So I resigned. Even if the corporate job gave me 50%, and all that, it wasn't just not possible, not feasible. Investment banking at that time, very intense. So that was a sacrifice, which I had to kind of swallow and go with the family life. But some people are different, right? I could not stay out of a job out of more than 8 months. I said, I need a job. So I went back to university. So it's your personality which will drive your decisions, right? So I'm not happy to be home. Some people are happy. I wanted to be in an intellectual environment and I followed through. Then just teaching there, again, I said, that's not enough. This stuff I know, I can just teach it over again. I need something new. So then I start ESG investing, impact investing. I'm a quant, so I just measuring model, which leads you to ESG, leads you to climate risk and that technology and climate. So data, so it just, I think I didn't plan it, but it's a natural evolution of me exploring things which I like to do and building the expertise around this thing and building expertise in a hard way because I was not in a corporate world anymore. So I had to show that, you know, I have the expertise, I can do the consultancy on that, I can build a company without having this mentorship and all this stuff. So, but it's just passion and curiosity, nothing else, and hardship, which is a very good, as Stacey said, it's very good education for your kids because you work hard, they work hard, especially girls. It's a very good role model for the young generation, especially for young ladies. So I'm happy.
I think that really strike a chord with me as well, because sometimes I'm trying to justify the time I spend at work, not with my kids, but then I'm like, I'm setting a role model for her. So one day she will understand. So I see striking similarities of all the panelists, right? Of their journey, get to where they are today, doing something they love and super passionate about. But there is something I think might be cliched, right? But we are at the intersection of finance and fintech, and that's where historically it's male dominated. So I'm particularly interested in, for all the panelists, even though I think the world has changed, right? We see more and more women, taking C-level jobs, women achieving great success. But I want to hear from you. Is this enough at this point of time? Do you think there's still stigma or there's still a lot difficult for women in this field? Maybe I'll hear from Fern first, because I think you mentioned about, to succeed in a traditional bank, you need support from senior management. But I would imagine at this point of time, majority of that senior management are still male. Well, hopefully it's different in Standard Chartered. So what do you think of this?
So you're right. So I think in Standard Chartered, we actually have we're a very diverse bank, right? So that's one of the plus points. So going back to number of women rising to C-suites, I think at least I can share from the perspective of SC Ventures. We actually have quite a nice balance of male and female leaders. I'll give you an example. Our chief legal is female. Our chief risk officer is female, and I do think that the management team itself they actually appreciate the value that females put on the table. They always say that there's a nice balance, and I really do think so, because women just see things slightly different from a men, you see. So I think when you put two and two together, I would see this is the modern way forward, correct? It's not going to be like a 90%, 10% or male-dominated space. Let's aim for a balance. I think even Standard Chartered themselves, that we're trying to strive for 40%. Female leaders in management team, and I think we are on a very, very good journey there. You see, so that's just a bit of a sharing from our perspective. In terms of, maybe if I could just share the kind of challenges that a modern working mom grapples with, I think all of us can actually acknowledge that we all strive to do our best. We want to be the best at work, and we want to be the best at home. Now, how do you do that? That's the trick, correct? And I always feel like, get your support system in place. So which means at work, find out who that support system is. It could be your boss, it could be your colleagues, that's one. And at home, find your support system also. It could be, in my case, a very good mother-in-law, or find a very good school that would, take care of your child. But I think as the modern mom, you need to have those base mechanics in place, because I feel, at least for me, when I have that peace of mind where everything's set in place, I'm at my best. I go to work, I never have to worry. And then I'm at my best. But I don't know about you ladies, what do you think?
I think I couldn't agree with you more. And it's important to have that support system. Looks like you've got it all sorted. What's your experience, Stacey?
Emma, I was just going to jump in and say, can I say something? And I hope there are, men and women, on this discussion and listening to us, is that one of the things I always say is marry well. I have been so lucky because of a feminist partner, and I even failed to forget to mention him when I said 3 kids and the husband. I just talked about the kids and not the husband, but he retired early so that he can enable us. One of our children needed a little bit more support. We recognized that we couldn't both have the high intensity career that we were both having, and that he had to take a backseat for me and for the family. And that isn't easy, especially in an Asian, society, and the sacrifices that we both make as a result. Because I can tell you, I would much rather be, doing that homework and bossing, the kids around, but I couldn't because I have something else that I need to get done. So we also have to rewire a little bit of your DNA as well in order for that support system to come through. Because if you only say I have the support system, but actually not allowing my partner or the support system do their work, sometimes gets as hard. I'll give you one last story and then I'll move on. My daughter is 5.5 years old, and she just went into, prep, and she has a science experiment. And so, that she has to do a presentation, God forbid, right? And so, I was training. We were doing, practices together, and my husband kept going a different way of encouraging her. When my daughter was having some of her lack of confidence moment, and she said, "Mommy, I can't do this, I just won't be good enough." A typical mom would be like, "It's okay, you're 5.5, it's all right, we'll have next time." Nope, my husband just kept charging on, doing it a different way. And she aced it. And then, her teacher even says she must have had so much practice. Now, if he hadn't been the main carer, the result would have been so different. And so this is why diversity works. It's not because we're men and women. It's because we have a different way of approaching things. And that's why we want to bring it not just to work, we wanted to bring it at home. And, I quote, Stora Sternberg, she always says, get the men to do laundry. They're not helping, they're supporting. And I think when we do more of that and we show that as an example, we talk about it, it makes that world of difference on, allowing us and enabling us, to be that. And I also ask men when they have had new children, my male colleagues, are you losing any sleep? Because if you're not, then you're not being a great, father. So we balance those conversations, that representation will come. The representations of just ideas and insights will come. Back to you, Emma. I don't know if that resonates.
I think we need to take this clip and send it to your husband, and he will feel greatly appreciated. You will get a great Christmas gift. So the rest of the panelists, do you guys have? Do you want to step in, share your view? What are the support systems? How did you guys manage?
Roslyn, you have a good story. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Roslyn has a good story.
So the first time I quit twice for my husband, once to move to Singapore, and the other when my daughter was sick. But now my husband is no longer retired since I spent all the money. And so he went back to work. And he's the one that took the kids to their college search and took them to college in the US. But, and I felt guilty my entire life about balancing work and the kids. And I only lost my guilt when my daughter was 20 and she was off in Chile study abroad. But the first month was so horrible for her. She called me to say she wanted to come home. But, we got to talking and I asked my daughter, who was crying her head off, right, on the phone from Chile, and asked her, what do you want to do when you grow up anyway, Sibane, right? Maybe failing your calculus class, in Spanish is not so bad in Chile. And so you know what she said? She said, Mommy, I want to grow up to be just like you. And you know what? That's finally 20 years of guilt. It went away. But that's what it took for us.
That's the ultimate validation.
I'm not sure she feels that way today, but at that point.
I'm waiting for that day.
Oh.
That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing. Dr. Mary and Antela, do you guys want to share? Oh, we can move on to the next story. I think we've definitely, choosing a partner is make your partner your true partner. I think that's very, very important.
On that point, I think it's funny because sometimes we go through panels, and sometimes my husband is listening, and I talk about how wonderfully supportive my partner is, my husband, and sometimes offline he comes and says, it's not like I could have stopped you. So I think there's a balance between asking for permission and asking for forgiveness, right? I think we have to also make our expectations clear, and for us it's always been about being equals in the relationship. And in cases where I'm expected to do certain things, I'm very clear about, would you ask me if I was a man, or would you ask this question if I was a man? And that question works with teams, with colleagues, with bosses, and I think it's magic. It's like, oh, I would never ask a man actually about who's taking care of your kids, right? So we do building a support network. I think it's absolutely fundamental, but that means also trusting and releasing management, delegating. I think we all can continue to always be better at that and continue to trust and let go of some of these areas. And then that comes with less guilt, less, and the ability to really trust others on taking care of our kids.
Thank you for the sharing.
Yeah, if I may, just when all this comes to the partner, how much you delegate, I think sometimes you put too much pressure on on the majority of women. It just, even if you want to delegate too much, it's just not possible. You can't change in a couple of decades what the men and women are programmed somehow in their DNA. So you can't push it too much and too far, right? So then the issue is, how do you handle it, how much you give up and how you pursue. So it's a lot of compromise along the way, right? And for me personally, what has worked is, like, I come from Europe, specifically Albania, which is a communist country. So my mom was very high in career, and my father is also, women were equal. But in most European countries, you still have this kind of women stay back at home, takes care of the kids. You don't have, the support system is yourself. So you take care of the kids. There's no like helpers like you have in Asia. So Asia is much more forgiving and allowing women to have this kind of career. That would be much less in Europe, unless you have in Nordic countries social welfare system and all this stuff. So what has worked for me in Asia is actually been the opposite of a helicopter mom. So giving kids the responsibility to do their stuff, to manage their school and academics. The barrier is quite high, so I'm not happy with if they get 7 out of 8, I say, why 7? It's the highest in the class, why not 8? So that's do your best and so in a nice way, not that we are always like sport oriented, family sport activity, play is very important, but academic, you have to charge. And I have done my education, you do your education, and you do it how you want to do it. You set your time and limit. So basically, I've delegated most of my my support system to themselves, managing time. And it's been wonderful to see them waking up at 4:30, 4 o'clock, or waking up at 1 o'clock when in Europe to log in their Zoom classes taking place in Canadian school in Hong Kong. And they do that for 8 weeks in a row without me having to get up. But they get. So that kind of self-discipline, they have to learn it because I'm busy. They have to learn it, but it will hopefully serve them for the rest of their life. So getting things done by themselves.
Yeah. I think the takeaway is know when to let go, right? Don't try to take on everything and really use 80-20, right? Focus on things that really matters in the long run. I would like to switch gears as well. Otherwise, this turned into a panel of praising husband and mother-in-law. So I would like to ask about your motivations. When you have to dig deeper, is there someone in your mind, doesn't have to be women, doesn't have to be in tech or finance, right? Who inspires you? Who is your role model? Whoever wants to take the questions first.
I can take it easy because I have no role model, actually. In the sense that, for the simple reason that nothing works 100% for you. So I have many role models which I apply for different dimensions. Because no one is perfect. You have to give up certain things, as I said, cannot be perfect, right? And I have different interests than somebody else. So what applies for me will not apply for them, and what I want to achieve and not. It's more like what you want to get and how you want to get. And the role model is how much satisfaction you get out of what you're doing and at what price. So it's kind of cost-benefit analysis and your personal journey in this life, I would say. So, but that's my point of view. Otherwise, it would be a struggle to fit in somebody's shoes.
So it's more like self-motivation.
Yes.
Yeah, and Bella, I think I really agree with you. When I saw the question, I really paused and I realized that I don't have any, but only because I think when you read all these books about all these leaders, right? We've got your Michelle Obamas, you've got your Sheryl Sandberg, but like you mentioned, every single one has their own journey. And I would say, even when you read like males, like Satya Nadella, for example, something that's common across is they are all authentic. They are empathetic leaders, and the greed and the hard work, all these are life principles or life skills, as you may call it, that can apply to anyone. So going back to the question, is there someone that we look up to? I think there would be there are different things that we can learn from different people, but you make your own life, you make your own journey, you decide what kind of path you want to walk.
I have had lots of role models sort of, in my younger formative years. And then, my first decade were predominantly men, actually, because there just weren't that many females that were there. And then in the second decade, as more leaders, women leaders emerges, I would say they become more like peer coach now than role models, because we're growing together. So, it's the support system that we created for each other. And then we are role modeling for our younger generations. So, because in the past, we didn't have someone we could look up to say, how should we be? We now need to form that. And maybe this is also one of the reasons why we feel like when we have to pick one person, it's very difficult, because we pick different characteristics, of whether it's our mothers, our fathers, our teachers, for example, for me, and a lot of our male managers. But we, consolidate that and then say, okay, then what does that make of me as a leader? And then how do I then pass it and pay it forward to our, our younger generation? However, I think that, what I would want to say with role modeling, it's efficacy. I don't know about all of you, but like through my career, the efficacy that I have received in someone seeing that spark in me, that I could do something that I didn't believe in me that I could do, that those sparks really helped. And, I couldn't have been more grateful. And I think this is also why we are now moving from just mentorship to efficacy, because that efficacy is what a lot of women need in order for them to continue to charge on, creating the career that they want, not what they have seen have been done before.
I think couldn't have said it better. Thanks for sharing, Stacey. Rosalind, would you like to share your perspective?
My mom is now 90, but she left 2 daughters behind during the Communist Revolution. Her husband was killed. Her mother was put into labor camp. So she went to Hong Kong to earn money and for the family, and just happened to meet my father, who was 69 years old at that time, and who was an illegal alien hiding in the US for 40 years, right, in Chinatown. And they brought us up in very, very poor neighborhoods, but that strength and that sacrifice inspires me to be strong, because what I go through is so little compared to my parents, who gave us the education to break out of our cycle of poverty. So my mom at 90 learned how to swim. So she's still learning. And so that inspires me to keep learning and keep striving and be strong for others. Yeah, my mom inspires me.
Thank you. I think for a lot of people, mother figure is definitely the first role model, right? You draw a lot of strength from, for sure. Angela? Oh, sorry, Dr. Mary, would you like to share?
Yes, and I think we come from a past where we were asked to pick role models and follow people who were famous, and there was this idol culture around, big businessmen or super famous politicians. And I think we are moving more to a phase where we need to understand more what our identity is and where we want to be based on lots of different components. So being grounded in the family history, knowing where we are from, I think it's very important. It's something that I try to teach my kids. We have a place in Spain, so we go back. It's our point of origin, but life is here. Our life is here. Our future is here. So I want them to know, the history, there was a civil war, there was a lot of suffering. That is part of who we are. And it's important to understand because it puts into context things like, yes, you cannot go to the park in a group of 6, so you cannot go. So it's nothing compared to what, our ancestors went through. So we need to understand that when we educate our kids. for me and for my career, I'll tell you a funny story, which is growing up, I love technology and science fiction, and one of my favorite shows was the Star Trek Voyager. And in the 90s, they finally had a female captain, Janeway, and it's a show that I've seen probably 7 times altogether, and I'm watching it now again with my 13-year-old son, and I'm rediscovering all the ethical dilemmas that this woman who was an engineer in a position of power, managing a lot of men in a very futuristic setting, she's making in every episode decisions about ethics, about the influence of artificial intelligence, things that are so real for today, for today's world, and for the future of our kids. So I think she's a fantastic fictional character of a woman in power in technology. And going back to thinking why one of my, for 20 years she has been, a role model for me, it just reflects the fact that there are not enough women leaders in technology. There were not that many. I remember the first time that I saw, the CEO of, IBM, and thinking that it could actually be a woman, right? Or, I work for a fantastic company at the moment. Visa has a lot of fantastic female role models, and it's been wonderful. But I know that more organizations need to continue to drive their programs around talent acquisition, building a pipeline, and really driving more equality and leadership from the bottom up, so we can have more role models in the future.
Yeah, I think you touched on a very, very important point, which is the reality is there are still quite few women leaders in tech and finance, right? And then even though people are conscious of promoting that diversity, but I think we still have some room to go. So what role or governments could play, or what role the industry could play in promoting and advancing women? I don't know if you guys are aware of any initiatives or things you think could actually benefit the industry to promote that diversity in the long run.
Maybe Emma, I'll start, because Citi has been an organization that, have really supported, diversity. A few years ago, we've come out, in public declaring that we're going to have a representation target of increasing it to 40%. And that was not done, right? And that was a recognition. And we debated internally because, is that a target? Is that a goal? Is that a quota? And we were very, very certain that this is not a quota, but it's something that we truly believed in. And that made a huge way of setting it at, having it at the top of the house and making that happen. What we also then have extended to do in the last few years is extending diversity and inclusion to just then gender diversity, because that's very visible. But yet there are others like generational, like religions and ethnicity, like LGBT. And all of these are just as important, because what we want to do is to tell our employees that they could be safe with who they are in the company that we work in. And I think that as we think about that and having programs that rally against, these different, groups, we open up to allow all of our colleagues to feel safe and therefore perform their best. And then going back to women, as you all know, Jane Fraser was appointed as our, incoming CEO, for the very first time for a female leader. But guess what? She wasn't just a female leader. She is an awesome, rock star as well. And some of you may have heard her early in the week. And I think that's what we want to role model more of. It's not just about having that, female person being at the seat, but rather demonstrating how different leadership looks like and how we, support each other. The last thing I'll say, it's also about recruiting, because a lot of the time, because it's still very male dominant, they might not know the women. And so we created advocacy program, a structured advocacy program for these women to be supported and, mentored. And we call it the Ascent program. And we've done that last year, and we're now doing it again another year. And the objective is to making sure that these women are, taking charge of their career and not have accidental career like some of us, and that they have purposeful career in, taking charge and running what they wanted to do. Back to you.
Fascinating. I hope more companies, MNCs, could replicate the similar type of program, because I do think there needs to be very structured approach to promote this. Fern, would you like to share?
I was laughing because the funny thing is, so in Standard Chartered, we champion diversity and inclusion quite a bit. We also have a female program, and guess what? The name of the program is also called Ascend. So that's quite funny, right? But I thought that
think alike,
global initiative.
Yes, but I thought that maybe if I could just share something a bit different. So we get it, right? So Standard Chartered, we really believe in having diversity and inclusion. But from the ventures perspective, what has happened is, because when we build ventures, it's always backed by data. And actually last year, we actually launched a challenge. The premise here is, females, we make the biggest consumption decision. Shouldn't we build a new business model around serving the needs of women, right? Because if you think about it, every large organization says, yes, we innovate for women, but you always get a pink credit card, a purple hairdryer, and can we move beyond all the stereotypes, you see? And that's how much we believe in celebrating women, because we launched the female business challenge show. It's called the Venus Venture Challenge. We came up with 2 ventures that we preceded. They're on its way to completing market research and prototype. And I think the proof is always in the pudding. Correct? You back your initiatives with action, and people will believe you.
Thank you so much, Fern. I think we pretty much come to the end of the panel, and I can't believe how quickly it has flew by, and we should get together another time. This has been really fun. I want to wrap up with the last question, which is pretty cliche, but I think it has to be asked. Is, I think we all had a pretty lucky career, right? Going through the challenges to get to where we are. But if you were to relive it, or if you were to give advice to your younger self, what is that one advice you think could make your life easier? Could actually help you to get where you are today faster?
If I may just jump in.
Yes, please.
My advice to the students I have at university, or my daughter, is never stop learning. So never, ever stop. Always be a student in life. As even Rosalind was saying, her mom is learning swimming. So never stop learning in life. Be curious and follow your passion. It will lead to where you need to be. It's just follow your passion. So that's
passion-led.
Yeah, passion-led. Because then the work is not work. I work hard. Maybe you say you're workaholic. I said yes, but maybe I like doing it. So it's the work is not work when you do what you like. So
that's true. I read a book. It says life is about suffering. You're just choosing what you're willing to suffer for. So you have to choose something you love.
Exactly.
Sorry, Stacey.
I love that. No, Emma, I was just gonna say, own it. Just own that power. It's all within us. We've got the strength. We've got the resilience. We know how to do this, and have the network of support. But own that career, own that personal life, own that personal development. It will mean something. You just don't know it now, but it will mean something later on. And then you'll look back and say, that's why that happened. So I would say own it.
Thank you. Rosalind, would you like to share yours?
Yeah, I would say whenever you come into a fork in the road, because we all have these decision points, always choose the harder path, because you will grow only if you have to struggle and overcome the obstacles that come along the way, because it is about the suffering and the struggling, because that is growth. And if you do that, you will grow into a very different person and you will learn true confidence.
Looks like we've read the same book. So, Dr. Mary.
I think on top of what everybody has already said, I think it's important. So I teach as well, and I tell students, don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Remember that, especially when we mentor younger generations, they're growing up in a very different world than we grew up. The pressure of, social media, the pressure of all this 24/7 life, it's very different. So I always tell them, don't worry about what anybody else will think. Worry about what you will think in the future, because it's about you. So you have to own your career, own your future, and build the skills that will take you forward. So completely agree with non-stop learning and sometimes making hard choices, even if everybody else disagrees. I think it's important to own your future and take it forward.
That's so true. Fern, over to you.
So maybe just two nuggets of sharing, right? So the first one is from my ex-boss. He told me before, Fern, keep punching above your belt. And I think that has been my mantra, and it has kept me going all the time. And of course, the other one is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We are an accumulation of our entire life experiences.
Thank you so much, Fern. I think that comes to the end of the panel. Thank you so much for your insightful sharing. I hope the audiences are able to take away some wisdoms and useful tips. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the Singapore FinTech Festival.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.